I think the only reason Chipotle is frankly going down and frequency is going down is because we're used to our memories of like 10 years ago getting a really nice burrito bowl or a really fat burrito to go, where we're like, dude, it doesn't even stay in. You know, you take a bite at one end and like the back explodes because there's so much food in it. That was the reputation Chipotle had. Now all of a sudden it's like, yo man, I gotta order 2 of these sometimes, especially when you get them to go. You get them to go, you gotta order like 2 of the burritos to be like what they used to be. Those, you know, fat burritos where they're like, damn, Chipotle loves me. They load this crap up. Now, you know, you go in for a burrito or you DoorDash, worse, a burrito. If you DoorDash the burrito, the $19 burrito with guacamole is going to end up being like $25 because of the tip and the delivery fee and all this stuff. And then you get it and it's like half the size of what you're used to. And you're like, bro, I'm getting scammed is what it feels like. Like, it's the worst feeling ever when you're hungry and you DoorDash and then you get the product and it's like, yo, this is not okay. It's the worst feeling ever. So anyway, it's not a surprise to me that low to middle income consumers are further reducing their frequency. Now, they saw this earlier this year when consumer sentiment declined sharply, they say, which is not a surprise because, you know, we sort of had the tariff disaster. But now, what they say is, we believe that guests with an income of below $100,000 represents 40% of our sales. So 1 in 4 of their customers, they believe, have an income of under $100,000. Honestly, that's also kind of interesting. And this is their estimate. I mean, they don't really know. So they're, you know, maybe there's a guy like in the back who's like, that guy's broke, you know, judging us. But anyway, you know, that means 60% of sales are to 6-figure plus people, essentially, based on our data. Dining out less often due to the economy and inflation. The particularly challenging cohort is 25 to 35. We believe this trend is not unique to Chipotle and occurring across all restaurants. Well, it makes you, and it skews younger. Well, it makes sense because, man, I mean, people who are graduating college right now are just absolutely getting effed. You know, new grads today have a really tough time. Now, in fairness, millennials had a tough time too, who were graduating in 2008, 9, 10, 11, right? So like, unfortunately, cyclically, that can happen. You go through these periods of time where it's hard to get a good job. You know, I was looking at somebody took a screenshot of like a Reddit post the other day, and they're like, there's this person who, you know, they lost their job in bookkeeping. They now are a server and they're waiting tables. Their credit score is 500 and they're like, man, I just can't get ahead. Like, there's a little bit of balance here. We generally have to start with the financial education of like, stay away from buy now, pay later, stay away from debt, because oftentimes what happens is you could be waiting tables, but that doesn't mean you need to have a 500 credit score. So there's a broader problem there too. Like when I was a server, you know, I had a 770 credit score. Actually, I was more just like busboy and host and expediter. And occasionally I was able to sneak in serving a table or two, but I never actually made it to server. Lauren did. And then she made it to manager. She's freaking awesome. And I got her the job there, but that was at Red Robin. But anyway, the point is, like, that's not an excuse for having a bad credit score, right? Credit's really important. But anyway, finally, the promotional environment has intensified. This is not uncommon either. So you're finding this with Starbucks as well. And this is what happens when the economy slows down. So pricing power shrinks, right? PP shrinks. This is one of the reasons why breadth in the stock market is so narrow that people are just plowing money into stocks like Nvidia, because the pricing power is absolutely insane at companies like Nvidia. Remember, they're taking 58 cents out of every dollar to the net income. That is absolutely insane. You know, that's like a great gross margin, but their gross margin is even better. Their gross margin is sitting at, 72%. These are incredible margins. That's exactly what you're not seeing at Starbucks in their earnings release. You know, their earnings release yesterday actually indicated more of a deterioration in margins. And we'll look at it as well at Chipotle, but Chipotle's earnings call really points this out to us, that these are companies that appeal to everyday Americans, and they don't have the ability to offset inflation. This is what we're seeing consistently with companies saying, hey, you know what? We're not going to raise prices at the pace of inflation next year. That's what Chipotle was saying. Part of that is because they can't, because their margin's going to tank even more. Look at Starbucks' earnings here. This is a sign of what's going on with the K-shaped recovery. This is why we've got frustration supporting politicians like Imam Domini, right? But look at this. I've got quarter-end net revenues of $6.9 billion at Starbucks. But look at their actual operating margin. Operating margin at just 4.5%. A collapse from the 18.7% operating margin that they previously had. Complete collapse. Now, part of that they blame on restructuring associated with the closure of stores, and they're trying to get quote unquote back to Starbucks. But that's still a massive decline in operating margin, and it's likely to continue to worsen even outside of their restructuring. So get into this promotional environment. That squeezes margin. It means you have
little pee-pee.
Little pee-pee. It is what it is.
Chew on this.
Chew on that.
If you're still spending hours every week on rental administration, you need to see this. Today's sponsor is Baselane, and they just launched a game changer for real estate investors, Baselane Smart. And it's built to put your rental property finances on autopilot. See, Baselane automatically tags and categorizes your transactions with artificial intelligence. You can create custom rules based on amount, description, or account so your books stay clean without lifting a finger. Receipts? Just upload them. And Baselane Smart will automatically match them to the right transaction in seconds. Finally, no more manually matching and coordinating the upload file with the file name and the actual transaction. No, skip that. Baselane will help you do it automatically with their artificial intelligence and new feature, Baselane Smart. Baselane Smart also helps prevent overdrafts and missed payments by transferring funds automatically when your balance gets too low, if it does. And if you're collecting rent through Baselane, your money lands in just 2 business days. No more waiting a week to 10 days for your money to clear. You can even grant shared access to team members with custom permissions without giving up control. And Baselane Smart runs in the background so you can focus on scaling, not on sorting receipts. It's an upgrade that real estate investors have not only been asking for, but that they deserve. So, work smarter, not harder. Try Baselane Smart for 30 days at baselane.com/Kevin. That's baselane.com/Kevin. Or click the link in the description down below.
But anyway, despite these headwinds, Chipotle has maintained a stable wallet share, but that wallet share is shrinking. It's like, what is it? What's the joke with the onions? There's a joke about this. There are 2 times, it's something to the effect of like, there are 2 times my eyes water every single time. 1 is when I peel an onion. 2 is when I open my wallet. It's just the nature of the environment we're in right now. But we aim to get back to consistent share. Yeah, they're trying to climb back, but it's tough because it's not just a tough economy, but they've also got this now reputation of trying to skimp a little bit. And their version of skimping is really because they're also trying to fight inflation. So you get what's really called shrinkflation. The generosity gets cut out, right? What made their brand gets cut out. And so then they have to talk about reducing price, which you get this. All of this delivered at a price point that is 20 to 30% below our peers. They're talking about how, hey, we're going to try to do better on price. But the problem is, even 20 to 30% below our peers is still expensive. So of course you're going to get less frequency. This is what we saw with Fiserv. Fiserv responsible for 25,000 transactions a second, and they tank 40-something%. I think they're even down more today. So that is a sign of 2 things. 1, people getting nervous about high frequency kind of transaction data, right? Like you don't even get a dead cat bounce over here on Fiserv today because A, you don't have buyers lining up for the stock because people are basically out of money. And B, transactions per second, I don't think anybody's standing on a hill going, oh yeah, they're about to skyrocket. It's important we deliver this exceptional experience consistently across 4,000 restaurants, blah, blah, blah. So let's look a little bit more to see what they say about the consumer, especially in the Q&A portion. And then we'll look at pricing. So consistently, peak periods. Okay, through our research, we found that over 90% of Gen Z would say they would visit a restaurant just for the new sauce. don't think they understand people. They're like, hey, Gen Z is going to come visit our store because we got a new sauce. How about you just get back to the basics and take care of your customers and actually give them true value and rebuild that reputation that you used to have? Maybe get back to that. Maybe get back to like honestly, if they just did a marketing campaign that was like, try us, order DoorDash on Chipotle, and if you get a small burrito, you get your money back. And I want to see them load up that burrito so damn fat that it comes ripped, and then they throw some extra in the bag just on top of that, some extra meat in the bag, like the expensive stuff, just to reiterate that you're getting your load, right? Like that I feel like could almost go viral to go anti this. But you're still in a tough environment, so that doesn't change. You know, that doesn't give people more money again, but it maybe gets people to focus on Chipotle more versus the others. So anyway, they say they're looking at Q4 with a conservative view. We're trying to re-engage people through extra promotions that we ran. We're trying to get the consumer back into our business. You know, once you lose people, it's really hard to get people back. You know, once you lose that consistency. It seems the consumer, they need a Sydney Sweeney, exactly. Consumer environment is deteriorating, and the many marketing efforts are not fully offsetting traffic. So it's like, that's the thing. You can still try to market, but if you blow too much, like I'd rather than spend the money on advertising, just go pure social, in my opinion, and you know, get people to be like, damn, they really load up the plate now. That's the business you want to build, because that's the business that'll have a reputation for the very long term anyway. So yeah, I mean, this is a perfect example here of just this sort of layoff environment that we're in, where people are really constrained, and it sucks. I mean, look at this. We believe the consumer slowdown is really affecting our business in a meaningful way, but we would never let a crisis go to waste. You literally have Chipotle saying what's happening is a crisis. I mean, to be frank, the crisis that I think is going on is the crisis in their stock. Because if you look at their stock, since peak, these puppies have eviscerated value. We are now down on Chipotle from their peak of $69. We are now down 52.2%. More than half of the value of this company has absolutely been eradicated. Part of that is because a lot of these restaurant chains, they grow their revenue by adding stores. But at some point you start cannibalizing your own, other stores by just continuously adding more. That's why comp sales are such a good measure. In case you're not familiar, when you look at comp sales, you're comparing your existing restaurant sales to existing restaurant sales just to see what the difference is. And these are just companies that are suffering right now. If we saw this with, there's a reason Target is laying off people as well. Bloomberg just had a piece about how the building materials sector of even housing is probably going to slow down. So, they're looking at like Owen Corp, for example, and they're like, hey, like we're going to see a slowdown in building materials as well because people are just, they're kind of running out of money. And mind you, remember what I say sort of about the consumer. We had this explosion of enthusiasm and euphoria after Trump got elected because people, had this mindset of, okay, pro-business, stocks will do well, we could spend, hiring will do well, there'll be tax cuts. Great. But at some point that euphoria also goes away and we get back to reality, which is like, we're still kind of in like I call it a slow bleed economy. I don't really like the idea of a soft landing, mostly because soft landing implies like we're on final approach in a plane and we're actually coming into land. I think of this as more as just like, we're kind of like, we got like buff during COVID, or like maybe like really big during COVID or whatever. And now we're just like slowly getting cut and cut and cut, walking through a field of cactuses, and we're just sort of slowly bleeding out. And so it's that doesn't mean like the stock market's going to fall off a cliff, but you're going to keep seeing these signs where like one at a time, these companies just start getting taken out basically. So comp sales increased 0.3%. It's actually like, you have to understand that is negative because now I want you to adjust comp sales for inflation, right? Adjust comp sales for inflation, and their sales basically shrunk, 2.5%, right? So that sucks. And those delicious margins that Chipotle has always had, shrinking. It's because of the economy, stupid. As they say, it's the economy, stupid. So high frequency companies like Fiserv, I'm heavily concerned about SoFi. I love SoFi. Okay, don't get me wrong. I think they are an example of like banking done right. But I do think that one of the next order effects of a company or of this sort of economy we're in is that a company like SoFi, which is, just rejected the 3175 line essentially here. SoFi is so heavily exposed to personal lending that once we start seeing a rise in personal bankruptcies because people can't get a new job, unfortunately, that's where personal loans probably start getting hit a little bit more. And so look at what's moving. I mean, look at these. We were looking at these in the course member live stream this morning. Parker Hennepin, Rockwell Automation, Symbotic. What do these companies have in common that are doing really well right now compared to like a Cheesecake Factory or a Chipotle? They're not relying on the consumer. The consumer is crushed. The next order effect of that is going to be when the consumer stops paying their bills. SoFi doesn't have that issue yet. So that's obviously a real risk factor. And I'm not trying to like bag on SoFi. I love SoFi. I'm just saying, if you're in SoFi, it's something to keep in the back of your mind as a very real risk factor. But the consumer getting whacked. We see it over and over again. So now another thing to look at when you look at Chipotle here is they're blunt about it. We continue to see persistent economic pressure. I mean, they're calling this a crisis. Now, they say they're trying to sharpen their marketing message, but again, you still have this impression of them trying to cut costs everywhere they can. Now, let's see if that actually exists in their earnings call, because sometimes what you could do is you could actually see that executive pressure in here. Additionally, inflation is accelerating in the mid-single digits, primarily due to tariffs and rising beef costs, and we expect this to remain in 2026. We do not plan to fully offset this incremental inflation in the near term because they don't have PP, right? This will pressure margins. Remember how I have always said that tariffs will bite companies when companies start taking it in the margin. Nobody wants to take it in the margin, but they don't want to lose even more market share than they have. At the same time, they're paying more money for labor, operating costs are up, marketing costs are up. They're trying to spend more on marketing, but they can't, it's not working. As if we look at that's all they talk about regarding costs. Their awareness of costs, though, trickles down. District managers call store managers, hey, we need to get costs down. We need costs down. We need costs down. That just means you're going to get a smaller burrito. I remember that at Jamba Juice. When I worked at Jamba Juice, people wanted to see me like load up that smoothie, with the fruit. And then when you actually did it by the size that the scooper was supposed to be, it felt like you were kind of like gypping the customer because they gave these like really funky small scoops. Wow, what a surprise. The store I worked at 10 years ago went bankrupt like 4 years ago because they started getting into this mindset, oh, we gotta cut, and I'm like, man, this is bull crap. And I don't always try to give people a really thick ladle of food, but anyway, in our best-in-class teams, we focused on doubling down on restaurant execution, sharp messaging, fine. We've got comp sales are basically down. Now, average check did increase 1.1%. That's sad. So average check increased 1%. Comp sales only up 0.3, which is negative when you look at inflation, which means that, no surprise, lower transactions. So you're getting fewer people coming through the business. So then let's see, any other comments here? Outlook. We are anticipating declines. Wow. For the full year, they think comp sales will actually turn fully negative. So that if you take inflation off of that, it's even more negative. Wow. I mean, it makes sense. It's a consumer crisis and it sucks. Somebody writes, Kevin was the best scooper. Nobody scooped better than I did. Well, I'd like to just say I took care of my customers. remember, the name was Meet Kevin, providing more. Hey, who knows? Maybe I'm the reason the Jamba Juice went bankrupt. I just loaded up the customers too much. I gave them more than they paid for. I gave them so much. I gave. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, that's just the consumer environment we're in. And it makes sense why people flee to companies like even AMD. I mean, AMD's had some phenomenal momentum. But I want you to understand Symbotic. Symbotic has been this play that we've been talking about since $20 in the course member live streams. And the beauty about a company like Symbotic is that they sell to a company like Walmart. And what's so great about Walmart? Walmart is the place people go to when you get squeezed on money. Walmart, Sam's Club, which is obviously owned by Walmart. Get it? Sam Walton. Anyway, Costco, right? These are where people are going. Now, what helps support those companies? Well, they don't want to raise prices because they want to be known as the value brands. So what do they do to increase their margins? They don't hire more people. Walmart effectively has a hiring freeze. So what do they try to do? More robotics. What does Symbotic supply to Walmart? Industrial robots for automation. We're like Parker Hannifin, Industrial Play. What are they trying to do? More robots to try to increase their automotive automation capacities. Look at, if you haven't seen yet, the New York Times robotics article with Amazon. This is huge. This is what's happening because companies they're taking it in the margin. Look at this. Amazon plans to replace more than 500,000 jobs with robots. We don't even have 500,000 people working in the automotive industry and unions in America. I think we've got like 350,000 union workers still working, not retired, in the UAW. But anyway, over the past 2 decades, no company has done more to shape the American workplace than Amazon. Did you know, by the way, I didn't know this, the Amazon logo, like what makes the Amazon logo? I did not know this. So just like little, I guess, extra fun fact. I also, who knows, maybe it's not true. I think it is. It makes sense that it would be true. But I never knew this. But apparently, Amazon is the place that you go to get everything from A to Z. And like that's the little logo, that the little orange. Anyway, I didn't know that. I'm like, oh, that's cool. But anyway, in its ascent to become the nation's second largest employer, it has hired hundreds of thousands of warehouse workers, built an army of contract drivers, now in interviews, and a cache of internal strategic documents. This is what I love about the reporters, is that like they get these internal documents and all these leaks, right? But reveal that Amazon executives believe the company is on the cusp of the next big shift, replacing more than 500,000 jobs with robots. Amazon's U.S. workforce has more than tripled since 2018 to 1.2 mil, but Amazon's automation team expects the company can avoid hiring 160,000 people that it would otherwise need by 2027. That would save about 30 cents on each Amazon item that it picks, packs, and delivers. Executives told the board that they hoped robotic automation, that's where money's going to be made, folks. Not in humans, not in consumer plays, but in industrial robots. To continue avoid adding to its workforce in the coming years, they expect to sell twice as many products by 2033. I totally agree. Amazon's not going anywhere. That would translate to more than 600,000 people whom Amazon did not need to hire. Facilities designed for super fast deliveries. Amazon is trying to create warehouses that employ few humans at all. And documents show that Amazon's robotics team has an ultimate goal to automate 75% of its operations. Of course, like Amazon's robotic revolution. All I just want to know is exactly every single company in the Amazon robotics supply chain for what move, the racks, the pickers, the industrial arm robots, everything, man. That's what you got to do, is put together a list of Amazon robotic plays. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people, especially even seasonal workers, are going to get hit. By the way, kind of sad. I hate to say this, but do you see how she has this transparent backpack right here? A lot of these companies are getting into transparent backpacks because they're worried about workers stealing. Isn't it like, this picture is actually really sad if you think about it. It's built into an article of, well, first of all, I mean, let's just be frank. a race that has been horribly discriminated against for hundreds of years, or potentially even thousands of years, and then you're working a job that's going to get replaced by a robot. So you're not building any, like, what skill set are you building in this job? You're taking this job because you have to pay the damn bills. Maybe you're a mom, you got to feed your freaking kids, right? So you're not building any skills. You're getting a paycheck just to try to get by. And then, like, the definition of, like, corporate power is you don't even get a nice backpack. You have to use a transparent backpack to show that you're not stealing from the company. It sucks. And this is unfortunately one of the big downsides of capitalism, is these are going to take a lot of jobs. And now in the future, it does lead typically to greater per capita income, right? Generally, wealth across the nation goes up through a capitalistic structure, but there's just going to be a lot of pain in between. And that pain shows up in consumer stocks. That pain shows up in the crisis that we're seeing with Chipotle. And
why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.